Wouldn't it be great if you could ask your data anything at any time? Like, how are sales this quarter? How's the new marketing campaign performing? What does the overall health of the company look like? And actually get answers right away with charts and graphics and actionable information. You can with Domo's AI and data products platform. Domo lets you channel AI and data quickly, securely, and innovatively to deliver measurable insights wherever and whenever you need them. Anyone on your team can use Domo to easily prepare, analyze, visualize, automate, and distribute data, all amplified by AI. Domo goes beyond productivity. It's designed to transform your processes, helping you make smarter and faster decisions and drive real growth. All powered by Domo's trust, flexibility, and years of expertise in data and AI innovation. The world's best companies rely on Domo to make smarter decisions. See how Domo can help transform yours. Learn more at ai.domo.com. That's ai.domo.com.
The Agile Brand.
Welcome to Season 6 of the Agile Brand, where we discuss marketing technology and customer experience trends, insights, and ideas with enterprise and technology platform leaders. We focus on the people, processes, data, and platforms that make brands successful, scalable, customer-focused, and sustainable. This is what makes an Agile brand. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom, advising Fortune 1000 brands on MarTech, marketing operations, and CX, best-selling author and speaker. The Agile Brand podcast is brought to you by TechSystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure you know about my internationally best-selling book, House of the Customer. In it, I walk through practical steps of how brands can build the one-to-one, personalized, omni-channel customer experience we talk about a lot on this show, and discuss ways to make incremental steps toward this goal. Don't just take my word for it. Destination CRM called it required reading, and I'm sure you'll agree. You can find House of the Customer on Amazon or learn more on my website, gregkihlstrom.com. Now let's get on to the show. Today we're going to talk about successfully finding the right candidates in a continually challenging job market and how recruitment advertising plays a role in this. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Neil Costa, founder and CEO of HireClix. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Greg. Happy to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. Why don't we get started with you giving a little background on yourself as well as what you're doing at HireClix?
Sure, happy to do that. My background is originally, I'm a PwC person, so I was an auditor back in the day, and then found my way into e-commerce startup company in 1996. So I've been in the online e-commerce space for quite a while at this point. Ended up navigating my way over to Monster.com when it was the number one job board in the space. And that's how I got into the recruitment marketing industry. And so we were basically operating as an in-house digital agency there, and did that for a handful of years. And in 2010, I thought there was an opportunity to build a recruitment advertising agency and really have a consumer marketer's mindset. And that's how I started HireClix, just bootstrap the business. And we've been at it for about 14 years.
That's great. So we're here to talk about successfully finding the right candidates in what continues to be a challenging job market. It feels like every quarter, every month almost, there's something's different, but it's always challenging, right? So, how would you characterize the state of the job market in general? How has this impacted businesses?
Yeah, I think that we saw this, just really everybody saw in any industry saw a unique dynamic because of COVID. And I think in the recruiting space, we were no different. Things were completely on hold as everybody tried to figure out what was next. And then after that, it was this, massive boom for the employee side of the equation. There's always this balance between who has the power at this moment in time, employers or employees. And if the employees have the power, those salaries go up. And that's what we saw right after COVID. There's just so much demand for talent that a lot of people ramped up hiring pretty aggressively, and I think we're dealing with a little bit of the hangover of that at this particular time now.
Yeah. And so it's lots of whether it's labor shortages or over too much labor availability. It's not just that shortages or things like that. You've said companies are having a hard time engaging candidates at the top of the funnel in order to move them through the application process. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I think that, what happens, this strange dynamic that's happening right now is that there's 4 generations in the workplace, right? You've got, you still got baby boomers, you got, Gen X, which I'm a proud member of. You've got millennials and you've got Gen Z. And, because of the baby boomers like rolling out in retirement, there's this kind of shortage of people right now. And then there's really experienced people leaving the workforce, and where, is it a great economy? Is it a good economy? Is it going to come back? I think the macroeconomic concerns are like all factoring in right now as companies figure out, should we hire more? Should we not hire more? Should we cut back because we hired too many people? And I think what they've lost focus of by worrying about a lot of this is just, how are they treating people? How are they presenting themselves to the outside world? And I think that's what we typically call the top of the funnel. What's it like to work here? What's your actual employee value proposition that you're offering to people that, should consider working at your company? And I think people have kind of forgotten some of that because they were hastily hiring right after COVID, and they're kind of confused on whether on what the market's going to do next, and whether they have enough labor or they have too much labor.
Yeah. So kind of a reactive approach to the market, but not reactive to the individuals, right? How would organizations, or how should organizations attract and engage interested and qualified candidates?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we're always talking with our clients about is how do you make sure that you have an authentic message, and I think that when you're forthright with people and you're telling, what you're trying to do, your mission that you're trying to accomplish, and how you're going to get there, and the kind of people you're going to work with, I think that's really what people want to hear and what they want to find out. It's not the 8-minute long video from a CEO, because that's just not going to give me what I need as an employee. If I'm a IT manager or accounts payable clerk, or or if I'm a software engineer, I can't connect with that. I can't figure out if that company's for me based on that talk. So I think that we're seeing a lot more people try to share authentic stories from people that they would work with, or they would spend time with in the lunchroom, in the event that they actually go to the office anymore, right?
Right. Are there specific segments of the labor market that you're seeing that businesses may be neglecting with their recruitment advertising?
I think healthcare is probably one of the biggest challenges right now. I mean, we have a handful of clients across the country in healthcare, and I think that they've got, I would say, just an extra X factor because of the burnout that happened at COVID, and because of all the bonuses that were handed out to have people make a move. And so I think that right now, healthcare is, I think the workers are tired, the recruiters are tired, the executives are tired. I think they're all trying to figure it out. And I think there's a greater difficulty in making sure you have a sound recruiting strategy in the healthcare space. There's definitely some people that are doing it right, but I think there's a lot of challenges there.
Yeah. And so, there's tactical ways of doing all this stuff, and just, trying to fill open positions and everything like that. But, how can companies be more strategic, and, use recruitment advertising strategically to overcome some of these labor challenges that they're having?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk with folks about making investing $1 in their recruitment advertising, we talk about this in the context of having this recruitment marketing continuum, right? I've got $1 and I need applicants, so I should do direct response advertising, which in our world is the job boards, right? Someone needs a job, they go to a job board and they see jobs and they apply. We're trying to pull. So you're talking about Indeed, LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, sites like that. My former employer Monster isn't quite as popular as it was or as it is now, but it's one of those things that's one strategy. Is that I need applicants. I need to spend $1 in the direct response application process. The other end of the spectrum is thinking about employer branding. Like, how do I tell people that I'm a good employer? How do I go out and reach people before they think about going to a job board? And I think that's really the part where we're trying to encourage the recruiting teams, the HR teams, and even when we start talking with the business executives, the sales leaders, operational leaders, facility leaders at manufacturing and warehouse locations, we're trying to get them to think a little more strategically about investing in that employer branding side of things, So that way they can get their name out in the marketplace before it's critical and urgent that they need those direct applications. And so when we talk about employer branding, we try and where we've seen the most success is getting messages out on, messages and ads out on YouTube and Spotify and even ESPN. And we've started to go down the road and invest quite a bit in Meta, both on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok too. So we're trying to get to job seekers before they know they're job seekers.
Yeah. And so that approach, I mean, that more strategic approach, I mean, that involves, as you were saying, it involves a lot more team members than just somebody placing a job board ad or things like that. You know, what you mentioned some of the teams that are involved in that process. Are you hitting resistance when you're talking with organizations about doing that, or does it seem like more organizations are on board with that approach?
I think that we're seeing more organizations be on board with that approach, and because it's really that sales leader or facility or operational leader that has the most pain, right? They don't have enough people to hit their number or deliver enough packages or build enough widgets. And where we see a little bit of like a raised eyebrow is when we start talking with the corporate marketing folks, because corporate marketing people they're focused on building their brand, selling their product, whether it's B2B, B2C. And then all of a sudden this like kind of recruitment marketing problem comes along and the HR team is like, I can't figure this out. Can you help me? And so having come from some good brands, we always take this very respectful approach that, listen, you've invested a lot in building your brand. Let us help you apply it to this specific call to action related to recruiting and hiring and building your name in the marketplace as an employer. So we have a very corporate marketing friendly approach, and I think that's disarming and helpful. And we try and emphasize what we can do. And as a corporate brand person, you're always worried about, is someone going to do damage to my brand? And I think that's where we're going to try. That's what we try and avoid. We try and get the brand standards, help incorporate them into the review process. And I think once we do that, we that resistance starts to go away. They see how we operate, they see how inclusive we are. And then, we try and relieve the pain of the operational people by going to market.
Wouldn't it be great if you could ask your data anything at any time? Like, how are sales this quarter? How's the new marketing campaign performing? What does the overall health of the company look like? And actually get answers right away with charts and graphics and actionable information. You can with Domo's AI and data products platform. Domo lets you channel AI and data quickly, securely, and innovatively to deliver measurable insights wherever and whenever you need them. Anyone on your team can use Domo to easily prepare, analyze, visualize, automate, and distribute data, all amplified by AI. Domo goes beyond productivity. It's designed to transform your processes, helping you make smarter and faster decisions and drive real growth, all powered by Domo's trust, flexibility, and years of expertise in data and AI innovation. The world's best companies rely on Domo to make smarter decisions. See how Domo can help transform yours. Learn more at ai.domo.com. That's ai.domo.com.
I think there's also at least with some of the organizations I work with as well, there's a growing understanding that there is a more direct relationship between the end customer experience and the understanding of the brand, as well as the employee experience and employee experience of the brand. And I even had a few years ago now, I interviewed somebody from a large CPG company, and they said they could actually calculate if someone had a bad interview, let's say, and just whether or not they got the job, they didn't get the job, but if they had a bad interview experience, they pretty much could write that person off as a customer. And they calculated the loss of that customer due simply to a bad recruiting experience, right? So just kind of one anecdote of these things are more tightly related, but I know what you're saying. That a marketing team generally is going to look at job placement and recruiting and stuff as sort of out of their wheelhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, retailers, consumer brands run that, have a much greater risk of that happening. But, that could happen, it doesn't even have to happen in the interview process. If I go to the career site and I look at the career site and it's just hard for me to find a job, or I click to apply for the perfect job for me in my perspective, and then it takes me, 45 steps to get through that application process. So I'm just going to bail out and be like, my God, like if this is how hard it is to apply, what's it like to actually work here? And that those kind of experiences can have a long-term negative impact on those brands.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a little bit ago some of the platforms that you work with, and mentioned quite a few. Are there any that you're seeing that are, whether it's maybe surprisingly successful or just that you're seeing more success on than others, and anything that those that are doing recruitment marketing should keep their eye on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the core platforms I mentioned, Indeed and LinkedIn, I don't want to say it's a duopoly, but it's pretty darn close. Like there's a significant amount of influence that those two have in the workspace, in the workforce world. And, it's one thing to go like buy products or buy advertising on those two, but there's a lot of intricacies in managing those campaigns. So we see a lot of people that kind of flip the switch on, like, hey, I'm doing my stuff on those, I'm doing my advertising on those sites, but are they really optimizing? It's kind of like if you're doing Google AdWords and you've got a campaign going, but you don't actually manage it and optimize it. That's what we see happening a lot. So those two platforms are critical. Like you're going to get, your bread and butter. Like someone taught me early on, like, just give me the whole lesson of like movie theaters and popcorn, right? Like you need your popcorn, like high margin, high volume, like that's where you're going to get a significant amount of applicants. But when it goes to the employer branding side, which is, I think, the more exciting frontier right now, it's effectively, we're trying to help people build an employer brand network where we can go out and say, it doesn't matter, which site exactly, but let's help you diversify and build a mutual fund, so to speak, of all the different consumer sites. And the one that surprised me most is Reddit. We're doing targeted recruitment ads, employer branding ads on Reddit, and we can do it by category and geography. And we're seeing a ton of interest there, which is really cool because some of that interest is falling into the what I would consider harder to target segments, like in the software engineers, technical world, which is those folks are just not responding on some of the traditional job board channels these days.
Yeah. Interesting. So, I have to ask the AI, the obligatory AI question in the podcast as well. What are you seeing as far as the implications that AI is having? Where do you kind of see that in the at least in the short term? What kind of implications will AI have on the job market? What should recruiters be looking out for here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most of the vendors that we're looking at in the recruiting space are finding ways to incorporate AI into, Indeed's incorporating it into their search, and LinkedIn's and incorporating it into its. They're taking a very unique, skills-based approach to scanning profiles and things like that. So I think there's an enhanced matching capability that will be impacted by AI. But I think, and then the other segment is kind of first line support for job seekers and people who hit a career site. They're getting some interaction, and I think there's those kind of. I think it's very light in the recruiting world at this point in time. I don't want to say I'm conservative. Like I take my risks in certain areas, but I'm still in a little bit of a wait and see, kind of position when it comes to AI. I'm slightly more skeptical and want to see how it unfolds a little bit more before I take a strong position on let's go all in on A, B, and C as it relates to AI. So I'm probably a little bit more, I don't want to say less enthusiastic, but I would say just a little more practical when it comes down to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's also, some pretty well publicized examples of, bias in AI and recruiting processes and, and things like that. So, I think it's, some of it is maybe conservatism or some of it's pragmatism. Just, it's some of the stuff is not, it's ready for some things, but it's not ready for others. And certainly, in a hiring situation, you want to be, looking out for things related to bias or other things like that.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. It's so important right now to make sure that, I mean, even when it comes to advertising on some of the platforms, if you go into the platform and you check off, hey, this is a recruitment ad, some of the targeting criteria is removed because those platforms there's been litigation against those platforms if you allow them to let people, if they allow people to target based on certain demographics, certain zip codes. And that's been an issue in recruiting. It's been an issue in some lending practices and all that kind of good stuff. So, I think AI is going to be an area where there's potential risk again when it comes to selecting and recommending employees, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Neil, thanks so much for joining the show. One last question before we wrap up here. You've given a lot of great advice and insights already, but what's one next best action you'd recommend for those listening who want to maximize their recruiting efforts in the months ahead?
I think the most critical thing right now is to take a good hard look at if you're in the C-suite, if you're in like I mentioned, the operations role, sales, and support and warehouse, is really everybody needs to take a look at the front door. How do we welcome people in and apply for a job at our site? What's our career site look like? What's the first impression we're making? And how do we enhance that, make that better? How do we get a better career site experience? Because it's shocking that it's 2023 and some people have, a really bad looking front door. And, and I think that based on everybody else's consumer experiences across their phones and the internet and their, TV, their connected TV, we've got to just do better as an industry. And I think it's not just going to be the talent acquisition or the HR people screaming about it. It's got to be C-suite looking at it and going, wow, this is not what I thought we were doing when we welcome people and ask them to join our company. So that's the number one thing I would say people need to do, like right after the podcast.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate for the opportunity to be a guest. It's great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Again, I'd like to thank Neil Costa, founder and CEO at HireClix, for joining the show. You can learn more about Neil and HireClix by following the links in the show notes. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.gregkillstrom.com. That's GregKilstrom.com. While you're there, check out my series of best-selling Agile Brand guides covering a wide variety of marketing technology topics, or you can search for Greg Killstrom on Amazon. The Agile Brand is produced by Missing Link, a Latina-owned, strategy-driven, creatively fueled production co-op. From ideation to creation, they craft human connections through intelligent, engaging, and informative content. Until next time, stay agile.
The Agile Brand.